Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. Thank you for joining us. I know that many of you were here with Stuart Stevens last night when he was talking about the tragic killing of Alex Pretti in Minneapolis at the hands of Border Patrol agents. You probably also saw Rick Wilson's comments as well, and I'd invite you to go to our Substack where you can see their commentary in full. Today, we wanted to bring on some of the best journalists working today so we can all work through this utter tragedy together. And I think before we get into it with Joe Sudbay, who, of course, is a political strategist for progressive groups, he works on LGBTQ issues, immigration, gun prevention. And he also hosts State of the States on SiriusXM Progress. Before we start to talk about the events of the last 24 and 48 hours in Minneapolis, we do want to show you a video that's very disturbing. So I want to give you fair warning about it. It is one of the accounts that has been out there on Alex Pretti's murder. But this is the situation at hand. This is what ICE and Border Patrol agents are doing in the city of Minneapolis. And let's go ahead and start there.
What the fuck is wrong with you? The fuck, people? The fuck is wrong with you? Honestly. Somebody call the ambulance! Somebody call the ambulance! Somebody needs to call the ambulance! Somebody call 911! I can't believe they just did that! Holy shit! Holy shit! Just get come on! Come on! Oh my god, you fucking people, man! You're fucking killing us! Why would you do that? Oh my god! Oh my god! I can't believe I'm seeing this! I can't believe I'm seeing this! Oh my god! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come here! Come on! Come here! It is.
Joe, thank you for joining us this morning. This is just beyond comprehension to me. I wanted to see what your thoughts were in watching this and just after sitting with this for the last 24 hours.
You know, Susan, I have to say, watching it again, I'm really trying to control my shaking. That's how I felt yesterday. I saw online Will Stancil, who's an activist in Minneapolis, and he's been out observing like so many people have. And he said something had happened. It looked like there was a shooting. So I was following it. And then the first video popped up. And it's just so appalling. And then we've seen several other videos. We watched a murder. We watched the United States government murder Alex Pretti on the streets of Minneapolis. It's not the first murder they've committed in Minneapolis, but it's just so appalling. And even seeing it again, it's just so gutting. This young man who, a VA nurse who we just read so much about him and the people who knew him and worked with him and his parents talking about what a lovely man he was. He was out defending his neighbors. He was out to protect his neighbors, to observe what was happening from this onslaught of these thugs who Stephen Miller and Donald Trump have sent to harass and inflict terror on the people of Minneapolis. And it's, Susan, I followed pretty closely during the 2024 cycle what Stephen Miller was saying he was going to do. He's doing exactly what he laid out then. And I think one of the things that the Trump team didn't expect is the revulsion that has happened around the country to their terror campaigns. We saw it in California, in Chicago, in Charlotte, New Orleans. My hometown of Portland, Maine, there were several thousand people showed up on Friday night. It wasn't as cold as Minneapolis that day when we saw tens of thousands of people, but the revulsion at what this president and his top aides are doing to the American people, it's just so appalling and it's sickening. And I sometimes I'm at a loss of words for how terrible this is.
Yeah. Obviously, this is not the first killing in Minneapolis. Renee Good was also killed by a federal agent. There's been no justice, no real federal investigation. And it seems like this is the playbook that they want to deploy for the killing of Alex Pretti, who was a VA nurse. He was an outdoorsman. I'm sure you've seen the statement of his parents. I think we have that. I really admire that they were able to put this out, because if I was dealing with the loss of my child, I don't think that I could be this composed. I thought it was utterly haunting that they were asking for their son to be remembered and not smeared, and that they had to put forth this statement because they've seen the playbook of Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem. How do you expect things to be playing out over the next couple of days? I know, Joe, you spend a lot of time reporting on state issues. I know you have a lot of sources within Minnesota. What are you hearing from them?
Well, I think right now, one of the things we've seen is the community continues to show up. The community in Minneapolis and also around the country. There were thousands of people protesting in DC yesterday. And one of the things that's so enraging is, and it's so interesting, there's two things you see from the Trump liars. One is they're lying about Alex, and they're just lying. We see the video, they are lying. And I think one thing that's a little different this time, Susan, is the media is actually saying they're lying. I mean, they're basically calling out the lies. The other thing is how convinced the right is that people who show up are paid protesters, or this is some massive organizing effort. This is real. People really have feelings, and very strong feelings about this. People do not like seeing their neighbors being terrorized. People do not like seeing their neighbors being killed. And I think that's one of the problems this administration is going to have, is the backlash is so intense. Even starting to see some Republicans saying, well, maybe we should look a little bit closer at what ICE is doing. Just the little baby steps, but that's because of what is happening. And I know there's continued organizing going on. There's continued trainings going on. There's a real commitment to nonviolence in Minneapolis, which I think also is something that the administration can handle, that people actually are using the lessons of the nonviolence movement to make their point. So, this is all, of course, playing out against the backdrop where Donald Trump has embarrassed the United States of America on the world stage. So I feel like the country's really in crisis right now. And I think this week we're going to see what happens on the Hill with the DHS budget. I think Democrats have now vowed, Democratic senators last week they weren't, but this week they're saying they're going to stop it. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Senator Smith and Klobuchar from Minnesota handle it. Smith has been terrific. Klobuchar can not always, but I feel like they need to bring the message of what their constituents are saying to the Capitol and have their colleagues see it. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. And also just trying to be supportive. I mean, there's so many folks, there's so many ways we can be supportive of people in Minnesota, mutual aid, immigrant defense, people in Minnesota are raising money to buy food for people who don't dare to go out. They're raising money to help pay the rent for people who can't go to work because they're so afraid. So I think that's what we're seeing, and I think it's going to continue to spread around the country, Susan. And I just think that this Trump administration, they're in such a bubble. They believe that they have the American people on their side, because in their bubble, that's what happens. But in the real world, it's not happening. And I think that that's going to continue to grow.
If you look at the polling, ICE is -5 now in the country, which, this used to be the strongest issue for the administration. It's -12 with independents. And so they clearly have lost the country, which for someone like Trump, who does long very much to be popular, I have to wonder, do you think that he will follow the playbook that we saw from his first administration, where he starts to blame underlings? Do you think Kristi Noem's job may be in danger?
Well, I think this is interesting. The past week, we saw reporting in Axios that there were people inside the White House, all anonymous, whispering that they were worried. CNN ran an article Friday evening that Donald Trump himself was worried. And these are people inside the White House who are leaking this information. The thing is, Stephen Miller runs the White House. The Atlantic just did an article on him, on the psychopath that is Stephen Miller. And they basically say every weekday at 10 a.m., he holds a meeting to talk about his mass deportation agenda. And everyone's there. He's running DHS. He's running DOJ, DOD, right? So I feel like a lot of this chatter coming from inside the White House is because Miller is so intent on this. And the question is, does Trump ever turn on Miller? He's been with him since 2015. And this was supposed to be, like you said, Trump's biggest issue, and it's turning into one of his worst issues. So when does Donald Trump realize that, Trump wants to be popular? When does Donald Trump realize that Stephen Miller has destroyed his approval? I mean, Trump's aiding and abetting it. I'm not letting him off the hook, but you know what I mean? Like, Miller really does run the show.
Yes. And, I think we must say that the reason for that is that Trump is not the same president the second time around that he was the first. He is almost 80 years old. We've all seen the bruise on his hand. He was very slow to respond yesterday. He's always very slow to respond to anything on the weekends, which would have been a massive scandal for Joe Biden. And Stephen Miller has this alliance with his vice president, J.D. Vance, that his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, is very concerned about. It seems that both Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance are openly planning for a post-Trump era at some point. And you have to wonder just how destabilizing that is in the White House.
Yeah. Vance actually wrote on Twitter, this level of engineered chaos is unique to Minneapolis. It is the direct consequence of far left agitators working with local authorities, which makes no sense. But it's the bubble they live in, that they absolutely can't believe that the opposition is real and strong and growing. Because they only talk amongst themselves. And I think you're exactly right. It's the J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance is terrible at politics anyways. And I think Stephen Miller has no political sense, but they think they're geniuses. And look, they literally are ruining the Trump presidency before our eyes and wreaking havoc and terror and death and murder along the way. It's just so sickening.
It is. And I know that you have worked a lot on gun violence prevention. And, as a reporter, I have covered more mass shootings than I ever have wanted to in my entire life. And a staple of the response to that is always from the Second Amendment advocates who say we need a good guy with a gun to come and help. That's all we need. We don't need gun control.
Right.
We don't need any solutions legally, in terms of, trying to make it harder for instance, people with domestic violence convictions to get guns. But here you have someone, Alex Pretti, who was a legal gun owner. He was that good guy with a gun who was trying to stop a woman from being assaulted. And he ended up, from reports, with 10 gunshots in his body, and he was killed instantly. I have to wonder, I mean, is this going to be a red line with some Republicans, with some libertarians, with some gun advocates? Because this is the exact government tyranny that they have talked about for years. It's here now. And that's why they've advocated for the Second Amendment so strongly.
Back in the 90s, the mid 90s, Wayne LaPierre, the now disgraced leader of the NRA, sent an email referring to federal agents as jackbooted government thugs.
Right, with the Ruby Ridge invasion.
All of it. Yeah.
The Clinton years, right.
And, there was a backlash, but he meant the government coming after people, coming after gun owners, coming after people. The NRA has spent millions and millions and millions of dollars over the years trying to pass laws to allow people to carry guns, conceal guns in public, get a license. Some states you don't even need a license, but they believe in this to their core. Alex Pretti was a law-abiding citizen who was doing exactly what they said. And now all of a sudden, you listen to Bovino and the others were on, the talk shows today, acting as if carrying a gun is the worst thing ever. He was legally doing what the NRA fought for, and Donald Trump, with the NRA endorsement, has said he supports. And the thing is about his gun, Bovino is dangerous and very dangerous. He was on the shows today saying, he was there to assault law enforcement. There's no evidence of any of it. And I have to give Dana Bash some credit. I usually don't, but she actually challenged him repeatedly, showed the video. And again, Susan, what they're saying about Alex does not match what we all saw and what we just saw a few minutes ago. They are lying to the American people. And we've just never seen this level of lying and telling us not to believe our own eyes. And anyways, it's just so wrenching. But I do want to say one thing. The thing that's going to get us through this, and I didn't even want to sound corny, but it's the people. It's the people are going to get us through it. And I've been so inspired by folks in Minneapolis, by people around the country. In my home state yesterday, there was a rally in Lewiston, Maine. 1,000 people showed up. Lewiston's a small town. Who wasn't there though? Jared Golden, the congressman from Lewiston, who lives in Lewiston, who voted to fund ICE last week. He didn't show his face there, but almost every other elected official in Maine showed up, Democratic elected official. So the people are showing up, and I think that's really inspiring, and it's what we need.
Yes. As we were saying before we actually went on air, the fact of how many thousands of people showed up for the general strike throughout the city on Friday in negative 10-degree weather. I'm sure it was far worse with the wind chill. That takes a certain level of strength, a lot more strength than these federal agents have been showing, as they've just been wantonly gassing and beating and even murdering U.S. citizens.
Absolutely. And, we're both from northern climates, right? We know that kind of weather. I have all the respect in the world. And people came out yesterday. People were out last night organizing, talking to their neighbors, just needing to be with other people. I saw a quote. Let me see if I can find it, because it was one of those things. This guy named Anders, who works for Unite Here, Local 17, wrote on Blue Sky, one of the best organizers I know in the Twin Cities has a great line. We can't always take away the hurt, but we can take away the alone. And that just really got to me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's happening in Minneapolis. Yeah.
I think that's a great place for us to leave it, Joe. I so appreciate you taking time on a Sunday morning for us. It's always wonderful to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you for the work you're doing. And I feel the same way. We've had some great conversations over the years, and I hope we will have many more in the future.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to go ahead and bring on another esteemed journalist and author, Michelangelo Signorile. You know him from his popular newsletter, the Signorile Report, right here on Substack. He's also the host of the Michelangelo Signorile Show on SiriusXM. And of course, you've probably seen him on shows like Today, Good Morning America. He's also been profiled on CBS's 60 Minutes, the good version. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you, Susan.
Well, we started out today and we showed one of the horrific videos of Alex Pretti's killing. And that was just gut-wrenching to watch again. Tell us what your thoughts have been about the last 48 hours in Minneapolis, because, you know, we went from such like a day of profound hope on Friday with the general strike and so many people coming out in solidarity and so many smaller protests across the country. I came across two just about my day near San Diego, and that's been going on across the country. And then waking up on Saturday with just such complete despair as there was another brutal killing of a U.S. citizen with Alex Pretti. What's been going through your mind?
You're right about Friday. It was such an amazing and inspiring day. People across the country joining with the people in Minneapolis who were protesting the general strike. Here in New York City, thousands of people were out. They were chanting at Palantir, at the offices there. They were chanting at Home Depot. It really was an amazing day. And then to suddenly have this happen on Saturday with peaceful protests, because that is what was going on. Alex Pretti was someone who was not in any way doing anything violent. He was helping somebody else who was being violently attacked by ICE officers. It was brutal and gut-wrenching, I think, for obviously everyone there. Just horrifying to watch it. And my heart goes out to everyone in Minnesota and all across the country. And I think it is another breaking point after Renee Good, and one that now I think really is a very, very difficult one for this administration to try to defend, because we have such clear video. There is no way you can say that this man was brandishing a weapon, as Christine went out and others went out and said in this administration. It's just a lie. And you know, with Renee Good, there were all the different angles, and did he get hit, and did something happen, and all of this. This is clear cut. And you now have gun owners who are angry, and those are people in the MAGA base too. So it's a much more complicated issue, I think, for this administration to really defend against. And it is something that all of the country is seeing very clearly. And this is a man who was a nurse, who was helping veterans. This is a story of America and Americans who are helping one another, and seeing these thugs shooting somebody 10 shots after they have disarmed him. I mean, that is the damning thing here that they are not going to be able to get away from. They can sit on these talk shows and lie. They can do whatever they want. We now have the video evidence. They disarmed him and then shot him, and then shot him again and again and again. It was extraordinary, brutal state violence, state terror. And that is what we're up against. And I think that a lot of people are going to be on this particular story very, very, I think very jarred, even if they weren't already. And I do think it is yet another turning point. And we are seeing already, yet last night in New York, 4,000 people within 10 minutes. I mean, on the streets protesting. It's happening across the country. I think people are motivated. I think people are activated. I think we are really going to see action. I was really glad and heartened to see Democrats immediately say no ICE funding. We're not voting for it in the Senate. Those Democrats in the House who voted for it, shame on them, what they must be feeling today. But I'm glad to see Chuck Schumer taking the lead. This is what we need. It's terrible that it took another murder for this to happen. They couldn't do it on the first murder, right? But I'm
Right.
glad to see at least there's some action now. And the people of Minneapolis have been extraordinary. They've been leading the way, and we follow their lead still.
On Friday, money for the federal government runs out unless they pass another resolution. I'm wondering, do you think that now is the time on Friday for a nationwide general strike like we saw in Minneapolis, but going to every city as a show of force? Because now it seems like we finally have the attention of some of those moderate Democrats that have been very scared to take on ICE.
Yeah, I think, Minneapolis showed us the way. General strikes have been something that we haven't seen in this country in a great way as we've seen them in other countries, as we've seen them in Europe. And I think a lot of people didn't know the mechanisms of how it works. And if anybody could pull it off, it's Minneapolis and Minnesota, because of just how much labor is so organized there and how unions are organized there. And I think they showed us the way to do it, that it's not that difficult. Shops just close down. People just walk out. You don't go shopping. You don't go to school. I think it is time. And, even if not everybody, participates, or some cities don't quite get their act together, it's the beginning of something. We need to escalate to the next level. No Kings has been extraordinary, and we've seen millions of people out on the streets. Work strikes add millions more. It's another component, and protest matters.
Pressure on businesses, I think, is really important because they have been some of the biggest appeasers of this administration.
Absolutely. Look at what's going on right now with Amazon and Melania's film, and they funded the whole thing. Now they're trying to sell it. Nobody wants to see it. It's a big bomb, right? So they're pouring all this money into promoting it, and Tim Cook is going to be at the screening, from Apple. It's just horrific. And the workers for those companies are the very people who we know show solidarity with us and need to stand up and walk out too. So yeah, business, it adds another component to it. And it just shows how much protest works. I think after Friday, we even saw reports. CNN had a report about how the administration is very nervous. Now, this was before what happened yesterday and the brutal killing of Alex Pretti. Trump is nervous about the protests. He's nervous about losing the narrative. He's nervous about the fact that it's focused on the brutality and of course, a 5-year-old being detained and others. And that's why he was doing that song and dance and showing us pictures of supposed criminals. And that's why he did it all at Davos as well. So he's worried. The administration's worried. Then comes yesterday. Now they've got to deal with the issue of gun owners even being angry at them, which is part of their own base. They're still, let's not forget, dealing with the Epstein files and covering them up. So they are very weak right now, and we need to strike. And we've shown that protest works. Friday did a lot. All the protests in Minnesota did a lot. Now we've got to take it to another level.
One thing that I am struck by as a longtime journalist is just the way this administration lies with impunity. We saw it with Renee Good. They're trying the same playbook here with Alex Pretti. And they're also clearly engaged in a very high level cover up. A Trump appointee had to step in court and say, you need to preserve the crime scene. That's how desperate things have gotten. I believe we have the clip of Kristi Noem's reaction and the way she smeared Alex Pretti, if we could play that.
The White House has labeled the man who was killed in Minnesota as a domestic terrorist. Is that something? And have you seen any evidence to back up that claim?
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
Where's the evidence of his ideology, though?
True evidence of.
So, of course, this is a classic demonstration of Orwell, where you're not supposed to believe your own eyes. You're only supposed to believe what the state says. And we know that. But I've watched my colleagues in the media struggle for 10 years to deal with the fact that Donald Trump just lies about anything and everything. And now he is surrounded by nothing but people in his second administration who follow that same playbook. And while I think the coverage overall was so much better this time than with Renee Good, you still, I'm sure, saw that awful CNN report where it was just parroting, DHS's lines. Are we finally at a point where mainstream media can just say, we can't believe anything that comes out of this administration? We're just going to report the facts on the ground.
Well, we need them to just completely discount anything coming from this administration. And we need them in instances like that to really hit back hard at people like Kristi Noem. This fear of losing access, this fear maybe of getting fired, show some integrity, do something. We are in an emergency here. Whatever is preventing them from standing up to that and really hard. I mean, they need to really be hard and say, no, here are the facts. Show her the video. You have your phones, right? We need them to discount everything from the mainstream media. And if they're not, it's all happening on alternative media. It's all happening here. It's all happening all across Substack. It's all happening all across radio. It is something that we are showing, and it's happening on social media. And frankly, that is where a lot of people are getting their information. If they don't want to do it, they're going to be in the dust. I did see that, and I it's funny, words mean a lot. A few words mean a lot. The Washington Post analysis of the video did not use the term appears to. Video appears to contradict the, it said the video shows that they are not telling the truth, that their account is wrong. Those kinds of things matter. This idea of both sides. The video appears to do this, but they say this. Well, no, there aren't two versions of this. There's a line being put forth by the administration, and there is what we can see on the video. And I just say again, thank the forces of nature that we have video, because can you imagine if this happened without it being captured, what they'd be saying? Their claims that he's a terrorist. With Renee Good as well, they've never come back with any evidence showing us that she's been involved in some sort of groups that have been engaged in terrorism. It's all a lie. All of it is completely fabricated. I think we all need to put that pressure on the media as well and do what we can to push them forward, because they did today on the Sunday shows a little better at pushing these officials. Honestly, these officials had nothing. They really had nothing to grab onto. They are, I think, realizing that the video contradicts what they're saying.
Mhm.
Early on, the NRA had one line, and then they must have started hearing from their members, and suddenly
Mhm.
the NRA now, they lost the NRA, they lost the other gun groups. The administration must be hearing from those people, so they're getting pressure from all sides, and they're uh, they're stammering on these shows, and I was glad to see at least some of the media pushing a little bit harder.
When you were talking about, the fact that this has been so well documented with the various videos that have been going around, I think it's important to note that this is not a coincidence. The amount of training that people are doing in Minneapolis is really something that should be studied and replicated everywhere, because people are getting training on how to de-escalate situations, on nonviolence, on how to document what your legal rights are. And that's why we've seen such powerful documentations just from everyday citizens who are standing up for one another. And I think that it's very typical when you hear from James O'Keefe and other right-wing agitators where they're just befuddled. They must be paid protesters. This must be some sort of a concerted effort, because they've been running this grift for so long on the right, and it's incomprehensible to them that people might just want to stand up for their neighbors and do the right thing. And my deepest hope is that that's what saves us in this very dark moment, is that there are enough people out there, who, even a lot of people who are not really politically engaged, who just say, enough, this is not who we are, this is not what we want.
Yeah, I mean, the way people have been organized who've been protesting has been very powerful and in the tradition of every movement that has gone before. Every movement, whether it was the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's movement, ACT UP, all of the groups that have engaged in protest, civil disobedience, nonviolent civil disobedience. And what's almost comical is that the administration takes that. I saw Pam Bondi talking about it as if it's something nefarious, like these are professionals. Well, professionals at making sure they're trained to be doing activism work, but no, not paid. These are people who believe in what they're doing, and yeah, they come from a tradition that has done this, and they understand it, and they understand how to train others. This is work that has gone on for many years. She was saying something on Fox News about how, they seem to all be in touch with one another, and they seem to all know exactly when to do this and when to do that, and then the legal person is there as soon as the person does this. Well, yes, that's how nonviolent civil disobedience and activism works. I mean, that is the tradition, and I every day thank that we have all of our traditions and generations from the past that have handed all of this down. And the part about the media I just want to point out too, I saw a local Minneapolis television report, and they get it. And I think it's important for us to really, not lose sight of what's happening in the communities where this is happening. They were reporting on what happened, and it was four people, two anchors and two others, although reporters, none of them commentators, so to speak. And one of them just said, "Look, we need to stop here for a minute and make sure we tell people that this is what happened. This is what happened. We have the video. This is what happened. This man was killed after his gun was taken, and we can all see it. Let's not play this game." So we're seeing that kind of media locally, and I do attribute that in fact maybe to the training by activists and others, because they're also out there connected with the media and making sure they have all the facts.
Yeah. I think we have that clip of Pam Bondi being utterly befuddled at the idea that people might be organized against this administration. If we could.
Some of the people that you arrested, like you mentioned, in the last couple of days, you feel it was incredibly organized.
Yes.
What can you tell us more about what we're seeing on the ground there? I mean, our Steve Harrigan, who's covered many wars, said that in his own observations, it feels incredibly organized. These people know each other. They know where to go. What do you know about this?
That's right. And I can tell you what I observed when I was there. It's extremely organized. The signs they have are all matching. They're well written. And look at what's happening today. How did these people go out and get gas masks, these protesters? Would you know how to walk out on the street and buy a gas mask right now? Yeah, think about that.
No.
Right. All of these protesters out there right now have gas masks on, matching, very expensive, by the way, gas masks. It's organized. They're out there to cause problems, and they're out there to hinder the great men and women in law enforcement, and we are not going to have it in Minneapolis or anywhere else in this country. We're going to protect our synagogues. We're going to protect our churches. That's why I was there, and we are going to fight back to keep people safe. Our country was founded on religion. Our country was founded on law enforcement, and that's what President Trump believes, and that's what we're going to do.
Something else that we've noticed.
It seems to me that our Attorney General would have been very befuddled if she showed up 250 years ago to the founding of this country at what she would have seen with people organizing against tyranny.
I was the chair of the media committee of ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, the AIDS activist group, back in the late 80s. And we organized a protest against the FDA. We gave it a name, seized control of the FDA. We wanted drugs and drug treatments to be sped up to treat people with HIV. We had press kits. We worked for a month promoting the demonstration. We had different groups making signs that all matched and making sure that they had the kinds of powerful images that can grab attention with the media. That's just being organized. That's just having a protest that works. And I think this is what they're up against. That was a real tell there. They don't know how to deal with people organized in protest, in nonviolent action. They have no clue about how to deal with that, because that's truth. That's what the people are thinking. That's what people are gravitating toward. That's the grassroots. They don't know how to deal with that. They only know their, propaganda that they can put out there.
So we've talked about that Democrats in Washington finally seem to have gotten the message, at least most of them, save for people like John Fetterman, of course. What is your assessment about how Democrats in state government in Minnesota have been responding? Tim Walz finally called up the National Guard last night. Should Keith Ellison, the very progressive Attorney General, should he be looking at bringing state charges for some of these people? What do we need what do we need from those leaders?
I think they do need to do everything they can in their power to hold ICE accountable, hold the federal government accountable. I know that there's now a lawsuit. I think it took them a while to get on that footing. How can they hold the federal government powerful? What can they do, especially because the FBI took away the investigation or wouldn't allow them to be part of the investigation of Renee Good's killing. I also, I've seen a lot of people critical of Tim Walz and others when, initially they came out very strong, and then he was saying to lower the temperature, and people were saying maybe, that's he was backing down or something like that. And I felt that myself a bit, but after a while, really, especially after speaking to some legal people who I have on my program, I realized that a lot of that is about trying not to let Trump invoke the Insurrection Act. And it's a very delicate walk I think they have to do, because Trump, to invoke the Insurrection Act and for it to be held up as constitutional, they really have to show that the state leaders, and this is what they're trying to do with these subpoenas, right, that they've put out there. They have to show that the state leaders truly are urging people, local law enforcement to thwart the federal government, to somehow not do their jobs. And I think, he has to probably walk that fine line, because the last thing we want is for Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act and for it not to be thrown out. It really needs to show that in order to, it can't just be that there's chaos and, the belief by the president that local law enforcement can't handle it. They really have to show negligence on the part of the leader. So I think they've been doing the best they can at walking that line. I think it's great, though, that they're moving in the direction of holding the federal government accountable in court, and I think that's where Keith Ellison comes into.
So here we are. It's Sunday morning, and we're now about 24 hours after the tragic killing of Alex Pretti. Where do we go from here? What would you like to see, both in Minneapolis and across the nation during this next week?
Well, I think what you talked about earlier, a general strike would be a great idea. If that, either that or just mass protest everywhere. I think we need to see people in the streets everywhere as fast as we can. Maybe it's a quick kind of a no King's Day, I don't know, sped up, or just as it's been happening, which is pretty spontaneous. I mean, as I said, in New York, within just the alert went out, and I mean, literally within an hour or less, people were gathering and thousands were out there. We need to see this all over the country. We need to see people protesting and standing up and not letting go of this. And if you could, break into that group of people on the conservative side who are uncomfortable about this idea of a licensed gun owner being disarmed and then shot by federal agents, I think that's a good thing. I think if you can connect with those people and, maybe they don't get out and protest, but maybe they don't, stand up and defend this. But even if they got out and protested, I mean, they're speaking out, that would certainly show that there's a lot of anger across the boards. And I think it gives the administration a lot of problems as well internally.
The truth is that yesterday it was Alex, and today it could be any of us. And
Absolutely.
That is a sobering thought for anyone, regardless of your politics, because state-sponsored murder is something that we're supposed to read about in other countries, not experience here. And I think that all of us owe a debt of gratitude to all of the citizen journalists who have been documenting what has been going on there. The local media, the Minneapolis Star Tribune and local TV stations have been doing an admirable job. And of course, just everyone who has been standing up to get groceries to their neighbors who can't leave the house, making sure that their kids are able to get to school. To me, that's the best of America. And I hope that is something that we can build off of as we go forward.
I agree. And I'm glad there are platforms like this, like Lincoln Square and others, where people can connect and really help to get the message out. So thank you for doing what you do.
And thank you, Michelangelo, for joining us. Please make sure to check out his Substack and, of course, his show on SiriusXM. We will also, in the write-up of this show, we will include some resources for all of you for how you can get connected and with communities locally, and how you can help the people of Minneapolis as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this special Sunday morning program. And Michelangelo, I hope you're able to have a good rest of your day as best we all can.
We're in with the snow today in New York, so that's what I'll be doing, just resting up a bit and trying to do what I can to get the word out.
Well, thank you. You do such a fabulous job of that, and so glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.